At No Limits with Pastor Delman, our mission is to guide you toward a life of fulfillment where you can break free from any limitations holding you back. We thank you for tuning in into this episode of No Limits, and be sure to connect with Pastor Delman by visiting delmancoats.org to access free daily devotionals, more sermons, and other inspiring content. And now, are you ready to learn more about living life with no limits? Sit back, relax, and open your heart to receive an inspiring message from God's Word as we join pastor, author, and speaker, Dr. Delman Coats.
Today I want to talk about how to handle toxic people. Now, we've talked a lot in this series about toxic qualities that we need to eliminate within us. Toxic behaviors, insecurity, jealous, shame, fear, rage, and bitterness. But sometimes the toxic behavior isn't inside of us, it's outside of us. It's around us. And sometimes we find ourselves dealing with people who are toxic. You know that, right? You can find yourself dealing with people who are abusive, people who bring you down, people who stress you out, people who cause you harm, people who bring you distress, and sometimes they just downright get on your nerves. Toxic people. And so the question that we want to raise today is, what should you do about the presence of toxic people in your life? How do you deal with people who do nothing but wear you out and bring you down? What do you do about a relationship, a friendship, or a partnership, a coworker who does nothing but raise your blood pressure and bring the worst out of you? I mean, you don't curse. You thought you stopped cursing. You thought you stopped. Until, come on, y'all know toxic. I mean, you thought you got it out of you until they come around. And in 1 Samuel chapter 25, there is this story about a woman named Abigail who is married to a toxic man. And this story in this chapter models for us how to handle the toxic person in our lives, whether it's a spouse, a family member, a friend, a coworker, or even a church member. Abigail teaches us how to handle toxic people. It's a really long chapter. I'm not going to read it all. I want to encourage you to read it in your quiet moments. 1 Samuel chapter 25. But I just want to lift up 3 verses in 1 Samuel chapter 25 that illustrate how to handle toxic people. Are you listening to me here today? First is verse 19. I want to look at verse 19, verse 25, and then I want to look at verse 36. Right there in verse 19, it says, "Then she told her servants, 'Go on ahead and I'll follow you.' But get this, but she did not tell her husband Nabal." Then in verse 25, it says, when she goes to the king, to David, the future king, she says, "Sir, please pay no attention to him, to that wicked man Nabal. He is just as his name. His name means fool, and foolishness goes with him." Then in verse 36, it says this: "When Abigail went to Nabal, he was in the house holding a banquet like that of a king. He was in very high spirits and he was very drunk. So she told him nothing until the next day." Is that in your Bible? And so I want to talk today from this text on how to handle toxic people. Now, by way of background, Abigail, as I mentioned, is married to this man named Nabal. He was rich, but he lacked morals. Verse 2 says that he had a bad temper and he was mean. He was deeply insecure and jealous, which led him to offend Israel's future King David by refusing to return the kindness that was shown to Nabal's men, who protected them and kept his property and his livestock safe from raiding Amalekites, Philistines, and occasional wild animals. All David asked in this chapter was for Nabal to feed his men for just one day. From David's perspective, it was the least that Nabal could do. For all that he had done for Nabal, it was the least he could do as a sign of appreciation for the protection that he had provided. But Nabal's arrogance and toxicity got in the way, and he rejected and insulted the future king. Nabal said in verse 11, "What do I look like taking my bread, my water, and my meat that I worked hard for and giving it out to people that I don't know?" And he effectively slammed the door in their face. And y'all, when David heard about it, he was PO'd. It's the best way I could put it. He was enraged, and he got 400 of his boys to go wipe out Nabal. He said, "Yo, get the strap." And he said, "We are going to go to Nabal's property, and we're going to wipe out every man living there." It was a bad situation. But the way that Abigail handled this situation helps to avert a tragedy in Israel. It helped to avert a tragedy for those in her house, and it helped to avert a tragedy in her own life. Abigail is an example for us for preaching purposes, because I'm discovering that there are many people trying to figure out what to do with the toxic person in their life. Now, if you're sitting next to yours, just keep looking straight ahead at me. But I want to be clear about something. I'm not talking about just having relationship challenges. Come on, y'all, talk to me here today. Every relationship, every friendship, every partnership will have some challenges from time to time. Not seeing eye to eye and having disagreements is normal. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about are toxic people. People who are unsafe. People who are unsafe emotionally, psychologically, physically, spiritually, financially, and socially. The behavior of toxic people is routinely harmful to you, leaving you depleted, distraught, and damaged. Just being around some people can push you outside of your window of capacity to function without being stressed, dysregulated, and on edge. Toxic people, tell your neighbor, he's talking about toxic people. Toxic people abuse their power, they abuse their position, and they abuse their presence in your life. They don't support you, but they demand performance from you. I'm talking about toxic people. They sabotage you, they undermine you, they smile in your face and stab you in the back. There's no equity, no reciprocity in relationship. It's all about them. Tell you, we're talking about toxic people today. They're irresponsible, they exploit you, and have no limits to what they will do to hurt you or to other. They don't care. They feel entitled to everything that belongs to you and to them. What's yours is theirs, and what's theirs is theirs. They are hypocritical, they are inconsistent, and they are contradictory. They will accuse you of doing what they are really doing, and they'll justify it in the process. That's toxic. And you know that they are toxic because when you're around them, you feel stuck, you feel frozen. They drain every ounce of energy out of your body. They sap you of your strength until you really don't have anything left. We're talking about toxic people. Well, in our text today, Abigail shows us how to handle a toxic person. And she shows us that, first of all, when you're dealing with a toxic person, you've got to discern who and what you're dealing with. Now, what stands out to me in this chapter is that in verse 18, the text says that after she learns what Nabal has done, that Abigail hurried. Are y'all in here today? Then the NIV says that she acted quickly. The New Living Translation said she wasted no time. And that stands out to me because when Nabal does what he does, Abigail really isn't thrown off, nor is she surprised about it. when he did what he did, it threatened her home, it threatened her well-being. But she does not go into a frenzy asking herself or other people, why in the world would Nabal do something like that? And I think that's because that she's been down this road with this crazy man before, and she knows who and what she is dealing with. So much so that when she goes to David in verse 25, she says, my Lord, please don't pay attention to that wicked man Nabal. He is just like his name. His name in Hebrew means fool. When somebody is a fool, their foolishness shouldn't fool you. Abigail is able to be clear-headed because this situation, because she knows who he is and she knows what she is dealing with. In this chapter, she knows that he has an alcohol problem. His behavior is erratic and he's got an attitude, anger management issue as well. And knowing who and what you are dealing with is probably the most important part of dealing with toxic people. Because oftentimes your ability to assess what's happening gets blurred by their title and your relationship with them. I need y'all to get this here. See, Nabal was Abigail's husband. And husband is supposed to be somebody you can trust. Husband is supposed to be someone you can rely on. Husband is someone who's supposed to protect you. And sometimes it's difficult seeing the toxicity when it's operating in someone with a title in your life. I'm gonna help somebody here today. If this is my best friend, if this is my sibling, if this is my pastor, if this is my spouse, then it can be hard for me to see what they are doing is taking advantage of me because of their title. The fact that Nabal is her husband could have clouded Abigail's ability to discern, and assess his behavior. When a person has a title in your life, it can be hard to orient yourself to the disconnect between their behavior on the one hand and their title on the other hand. Y'all talk to me here today. I'm wrestling here today. This is your mother. This is your father, your sister, your brother, your wife, your husband, or your friend, and they are abusing me. And that can throw you off. You literally don't have a framework for comprehending how your best friend can stab you in the back. You literally don't know how to process someone that you exchanged vows with lying to you, betraying you, and cheating behind your back. You can't conceptualize what it means for your spiritual leader to do something so blatantly immoral. And so what many people do is when they see toxic behavior from somebody with a title, they end up explaining away what they see because they get blinded by the title. Tell your neighbor, but don't let the title fool you. That was the wrong neighbor. Tell your other neighbor, don't let their title fool you. You got to understand that sometimes a toxic person doesn't show up in your life announcing that they are toxic. Oh, no. That's how you gave them the title in the first place. They don't show up with toxic person plastered at the top of their forehead. They usually mask their toxicity. They present themselves as kind and helpful and supportive and interested in your needs and your well-being, but that's really not who they are. That's their representative. And so the person you loaned money to was their representative. The person you married was their representative. The person you trusted was their representative. The real person had no intention of paying you back. The real person had no plans of keeping up their side of the deal. They had no plans of being faithful or meeting your needs. Be careful about giving a title to the representative. I've discovered that there are some people who are literally out to ruin your life. That's why you got to be careful who you connect with. You got to be careful who you go into business with. You got to be careful who you partner with. You got to be careful who you lay down and sleep with. You got to be careful who you marry. You got to be careful because, and I had to learn that out the difficult way, because I always assumed growing up that everyone had good intentions, especially if they in the church. Especially if they got a Bible, especially if they got a cross around. My naivete made me a prime target for people who were looking for somebody to manipulate, to cheat on, to lie to, and to steal from. And the toxic behavior will end up happening right under your nose. And you really not knowing how to identify the toxic person because you gave them a title. That's my boyfriend. That's my girlfriend. I love him. I love, and so the title can cloud your judgment. Tell your neighbor, don't let the title, I'm helping somebody here today. Tell them, don't let the title cloud your judgment. So if it's okay, I want to give you 11 types of toxic people to look out for in your life. Are y'all listening to me here today? The first kind is the pot stirrer. This is somebody who instigates conflict, then hides their hand. They throw all the rocks and then hide that. These are people who make great cast members on reality TV because they just love drama, the pot stirrer. Then number two, there's the chameleon. This is the toxic person who often changes their positions and changes their beliefs and changes their behavior based on who's around or the situation. They tell you they're with the plan and tell other people they're against the plan. The chameleon. Thirdly, there's the mole. This is the person who obtains private information that you have only shared with them. It's just for them, and then they go ahead and they share it with other people who should not know what you shared with them. Number four is the parasite. This is the person who attaches to your life like a leech, like a tick, and just sucks whatever blood or life energy he or she can get from you. What I call them, the parasite. Then related to the parasite is the user. The user, they come into your life pretending to partner with you, but then they don't carry out their end of the bargain. Once you agree to co-sign for the loan, which you rarely, if ever, you should do. I don't recommend it. But once you co-sign for the loan, they stop making the payments. They volunteer to be your partner on the class or the work project, then they don't show up for the meetings. Watch out for the parasite. Then number six, there's the scammer. This is the person who gets you to lower your defenses so they can steal from you. You gave them your account number and the password, and then they wipe out the account. Watch out for it's a lot of scammers walking around here. Number seven, the bully. This is the person who uses manipulation, threats, and violence to take advantage of your genuine heart. Number eight, I'm trying to get through these here. Then there is the person who's the victim. Yeah, the victim. Mm-hmm. This is a person, they got a constant victim mentality. This is the person who believes that everyone is out to get them, even when there's evidence to the contrary that's showing them that ain't nobody trying, they see themselves as a victim. Number nine is the hater. This person always finds a reason to tear you down and everybody else down. It doesn't matter what you do, what you buy, what you suggest, what you wear. They always have something critical. They always have something judgmental to say. And the irony of it is that they then go behind you and end up doing and buying the very thing that they told you they don't think you should get it. Tell your neighbor, don't be a hater. Don't be a hater. Number 10, there's the people pleaser. The people pleaser is the person who's got a strong need to please everybody, even at their own expense. And the reason this person is so toxic is because you really don't know where they stand. They on everybody's side. I could talk more about that another time. But the last toxic type that I want you to be on the lookout for is the narcissist. Lord have mercy. I could do a whole series on narcissism. But the narcissist is the person who's in the relationship only for themselves. Whether it is the grandiose narcissist, the big, bad, braggadocious person like our former President Trump. He's a malignant narcissist. He's a grand, overt narcissist. But all narcissistic people are not overt narcissists. There are some covert narcissists as well. Jesus said as much. He said, you got to be careful for wolves in sheep's clothing. That's a covert narcissist. They act quiet, they act shy. It's called a shy narcissist as well. This is the person who is just a taker. The relationship only works as long as you're agreeing, as long as you're buying, as long as you're paying, as long as you're going along. That's the only reason y'all been friends all these years, because wherever they wanted to go, you said okay. Wherever they wanted purchased, you agreed. The only reason the relationship worked was because you went along. But once you have a desire, once you set a boundary or say no, then you all of a sudden become an enemy. Tell your neighbor, watch out for the narcissist. Abigail hurried because she knew who and what she was dealing with at Nabal, and that then helped her to maintain what I want to call emotional distance from the toxic person. Yeah. See, what stands out to me in verse 19 is verse 18 is that when Abigail first learns what Nabal has done, she doesn't allow her emotions to take over and cause her to confront him. I want you to think about this. If somebody jeopardized your life, your children, your future, you might just end up going and confronting that person. But Abigail does not get in his face. She doesn't start yelling. She doesn't start screaming or arguing about how he handled the situation. She doesn't call him names. She knows he's a fool and does not let his foolish behavior, get this, cause her to act like a fool. In verse 19, she doesn't even tell him about the plan to work things out. Or in verse 36, she does not tell him that she has worked everything out without his help because he's drunk. It is as if Abigail knows that it is a waste of time trying to reason with an unreasonable person. I said something there. She understood that it is a waste of time trying to be logical with an illogical person. You are wasting your energy. You are expending a lot of unnecessary energy constantly trying to explain yourself with someone who is not trying to be reasonable. And that's the lesson that some of us need to learn. Rather than being drawn into the toxicity of the toxic person in your life, maybe you and I would be better off maintaining some distance, emotional distance, because if you don't, they just might ruin your life. Some of the depression and the anxiety that we have is because we are too emotionally enmeshed with the toxic individual. And every time they do something crazy, you go rushing in because you're so emotionally attached to them. Emotional distance is when you're dealing with a toxic person, and it can help you to protect yourself from stress and drama. If it's one thing that I don't need, it's drama. If you bring in drama to me, I don't have time for it. Emotional distance ensures that you can stay focused and stay regulated without being manipulated by their manipulation. Emotional distance protects you from placing your health, your safety, and your needs at risk, and it keeps your needs at the center of the discussion. Emotional distance with toxic people helps you to see things clearer and keeps your heart from being manipulated by how you feel. Emotional boundaries are necessary because I've learned this. Some toxic people do what they do because they thrive on the reaction that they get out of you. Come on, I'm trying to help somebody here today. This is why you need to maintain emotional distance, because some people literally look forward to the reaction that they get out of you. It's called supply. It's called narcissistic supply. It is a pathological need to feed off of someone else's energy, emotion, attention, and time. There are some people who want to see you dysregulated. There are some people who are waiting just to see you blow your top. If some people can't get good attention from you, they will settle for negative attention from you. And so you got to keep emotional distance so that you don't keep feeding their need for your supply. Oh, how I wish that Charlie Brown had learned that lesson. When I think about how Lucy used to treat Charlie Brown, it's clear to me that she was using him for supply. Do you remember how Lucy would always commemorate the beginning of another football season by holding the football for Charlie Brown? She always promised him that she would hold the ball, and every year for 70 years, when he would run up to kick the football, she would pull it back and he would end up falling flat on his back. Charlie Brown never seemed to learn the lesson that she was just using him because he let his feelings get in the way. Can I tell you something? Stop letting your feelings getting in the way of your relationship with toxic people. Lucy was a narcissist who took advantage of his heart to get narcissistic supply. Here's my point. Don't let toxic people keep using you. Maintain emotional distance. And because Abigail did that, she was able to execute a plan in this chapter to neutralize Nabal's toxic behavior. That's my third and my last point. That if you want to learn how to handle toxic people, you got to know who you're dealing with and who they are. You got to maintain emotional distance. But lastly, you're going to have to develop a plan to neutralize their toxic behavior. See, this situation in the text got handled because Abigail devised a plan to work around Nabal's mess. She has no time to get consumed with the insanity of his behavior. She needed a plan that would contain his behavior and clean up the consequences. And Abigail's plan entailed this. It entailed what I want to call a low contact strategy. Nudge your neighbor, wake them up. It contained a low contact strategy. See, low contact is when you decide to interact and or communicate with the toxic person on a limited or on an as needed basis. Low contact is when you decide to only meet with the coworker in the presence of other people, or to only communicate with them by email so that the conversation can be documented. See, you know they're toxic when you can't trust having a conversation with them, because they'll tell you one thing and then get in front of the supervisor and say something completely different. So you decide, look, I'm going low contact from now. The only time I'm meeting with them is when I got a witness. The only time I'm communicating with them is via email, because I need every communication documented. Have I got a witness here? And so the other way of low contact, I want some of you to get this who are perhaps trying to co-parent a child with someone else. The other way of low contact is deciding that co-parenting is not working any longer. See, co-parenting with a toxic person is oftentimes impossible because no matter what you do or what you say, they have no intention on cooperating or collaborating with you. I'm talking about a toxic person now. See, ideally, two people who have children together, even if they're not in relationship with one another, should be able to put their personal experiences and issues aside for the sake of the kids, ideally. But there are some people who have no intention of getting in agreement with you about the children. In fact, their intention is to get in disagreement with you about the children. And so rather than co-parenting, they counter-parent. You tell them you don't want the kids to see rated R movies because they're young, they're too young, and then you discover they took them to see the rated R movies. That's counter-parenting. You tell them that you don't want the kids hanging out with certain types of friends, and they end up throwing the party at their house with those types of friends. They literally will use the children to find out things about you and use it to try to harm you and abuse you. You will drive yourself crazy trying to co-parent with someone who is bent on counter-parenting with you. So rather than co-parenting with a toxic person, you might have to reach a point where you do what I call parallel parent. Parallel, you know what a parallel line is, right? Parallel lines are two lines that never cross or intersect. And experts tell us that parallel parenting is a parenting approach when you decide to give up trying to be in agreement with what happens in the other person's house. I'm doing counseling from the stage here today. Parallel parenting is when you release all of that. It can be difficult, but sometimes it's necessary because there are some toxic types who are determined to challenge and oppose and undermine and bring all kind of stress and drama in your life over everything. Short of them doing something harmful to the kids, like exposing them to predatory people or exposing them to sexually explicit content, you got to decide to release what is going on at their house, what time they go to bed, what time they eat and stuff like that. You are trying to get into agreement with somebody who has no intention of getting into agreement with you. And when you decide that you are no longer going to try to co-parent with a counter-parent, you then decide to parallel parent. So parallel parenting is a decision that as long as the kids are safe, you release what they do in their house, the kids do what they can do in your house, and I'm going to do in my house what we are going to do in my house. It protects the kids from contentiousness, protects your privacy, and doesn't put them in the middle of y'all's foolishness. It is a way to reclaim your story, your life, your glory, and your sanity. Sometimes you would do well if you would just do it parallel. So here's the thing. There are some times when you have just got to go low contact. That's what Abigail showed us. But I want to tell you, church, that sometimes low contact don't work. Sometimes you got to go no contact. I mean, you try, you talk, you meet with a third party, and it's not working. And so sometimes you got to go no contact with some people. No contact is when you completely cut off all contact from the unhealthy person. And you decide that you are no longer going to give an unhealthy person access to your mind, access to your body, and access to your spirit. Tell your neighbor, no more. No more drama, no more talking, no more arguing, no more stress. No contact is a decision to permanently remove the toxic person from your life. And I think if you get to the end of chapter 25, that is the point that God is trying to say. When you get to the end of chapter 25, it says that when Abigail finally tells Nabal what happens, he has a heart places where y'all used to go together. No contact can mean changing your gym membership, maybe even changing your church. Because you can't worship the way you need to worship as long as y'all in the same environment. Now, if you can, that's fine. But if you can't, might be time for no contact. No contact could be not going outside when they come to pick up the kids. You kiss the kids in the kitchen and you let them go outside and get in the car and go on their way because you don't want to see the person. You don't want to smell a person. You don't want to be reminded of nothing. It might sound extreme, but when you are dealing with somebody who uses every interaction to figure out how to mess with you, how to mess up your mind, how to mess up your spirit, it's necessary. They are just too toxic interacting with some people. Have I got a witness here? Am I alone in here today, or is there anybody here today who knows what I'm talking about? And you know when it's happening. You know when your life is being thrown off by a toxic person. You start losing and gaining weight. You can't sleep. Your hair start getting gray. You can't eat. You can't make decisions. You lose money. You lose your functionality. You don't want to be in public with them. You lose your joy, your hope, your dreams, your sense of self. Nobody else is worth you losing the joy that God put on the inside of you trying to fool around with a foolish person. For some of you, it's time to get out. God got Abigail out of this toxic situation. And the Lord wants me to ask somebody here today, what is your plan to deal with your toxic person? And look what happens in the text. When Nabal hears what Abigail has done and how she has saved his household without his help, he saw how foolish he was. And the Bible says in verse 37 that he has a heart attack. His heart attacked him. She didn't have to attack him. She didn't have to get out of character. She didn't have to lower her standards. She didn't have to compromise her morals. She didn't have to throw any knives or dishes. She did not have to get him back. His own conscience got him back. And God sent me on assignment to tell somebody here today, you don't have to worry about punishing the toxic part. God will take care of that part. The Bible says that vengeance is mine, says the Lord. You go on with your life and to be happy. I've discovered that sometimes the best get back is getting away and doing well yourself. Have I got a witness here? Go to the spa, get your hair done, get your nails did. And this story concludes with good news. That God ultimately removed the toxic person and replaced them with someone who was more suitable in Abigail's life. Come on, put your hands together and give the Lord praise today. Let us stand all across the building. I want to encourage someone here today who's been wrestling with the presence of a toxic friendship, business partnership, work relationship, or intimate partner relationship, that you have to reach a point where you realize what's happening. Don't let their title in your life cloud your judgment. You got to recognize who they are and what's happening. And you got to create some emotional distance so you don't get drawn into their vortex of drama. And then lastly, you got to develop a plan that neutralizes their behavior.
Here at No Limits, we want to do everything we can to help you get the most out of each message preached on the broadcast. That's why we created a free sermon viewing guide for each message. The viewing guide contains some commentary, the key points from the message, some space for note-taking, and questions to consider throughout the week. You can request your free copy of the sermon guide by going to our website at delmancoats.org. That's delmancoats.org, and clicking on the Watch tab in the menu at the top of the page. From there, you can view any message from our archives and download the sermon guide for that message before you watch. Thank you for tuning in today, and I pray the message blessed and encouraged you as you strive to live a life with no limits.
I am so glad that you took the time to watch this message today. If you have been blessed by this outreach, I'd like to ask you to become a partner in this ministry so that together we can reach the world for Jesus Christ. My heart is to reach people just like you all around the world and to tell them that God loves them and wants to empower them to live a life with no limits. Your financial investment in this ministry will enable us to spread the good news of Jesus Christ around the world so that more people can be inspired and encouraged. Will you help me to reach those people? Will you join me in empowering the lost and the forgotten? Will you be my partner as we teach people to truly live a life with no limits? To make a donation safely and securely, go to our website at delmancoats.org. That's delmancoats.org. And look for the donate button on the top right of the homepage. Thank you in advance for your support and for becoming a true partner in No Limits. Your partnership and financial gift will help us impact the world by bringing hope to those who need it. Your generosity today is a reminder of the goodness of God. Thank you again for watching No Limits with Pastor Delman.
This episode of No Limits with Pastor Delman has been made possible due to the generosity of viewers like you.